I sat in the meeting room, waiting for my Monday sales briefing, same as I had for the past 24 years. But this time, something felt off. My boss, Byron Callan, walked in without a folder, without a smile. "Marshall," he said flatly, "we're letting you go in 2 weeks. Just like that. No thanks. No warning." I blinked, thinking he was joking. "After 24 years?" I asked. He nodded like I was just a number. "Things are changing. Time to make room for new blood." I knew what that meant. His son Bryce, barely out of college, had been sniffing around my accounts for months. I stood up, numb. My sales territory, the one I built from scratch, was being handed to a kid who hadn't even made his first solo sale. I walked out that day with a deep ache in my chest. I didn't just lose a job. I lost something I gave my life to. The whispers had started weeks before, but I ignored them. I'd heard from a warehouse guy that Bryce was bragging about taking over Dad's best region. That was my territory. Still, I told myself it couldn't be true. Byron had always said I was his top man. Clients trusted me. I was the go-to guy for every big account. I wasn't just a rep, I was the face of the brand. But that morning, when Byron said, "We're moving in a new direction," I saw the truth in his eyes. This wasn't business, it was bloodline. Nepotism dressed in a suit, and I had no legal leg to stand on. I was independent, commission only. No severance, no pension, nothing. Just 2 weeks to pack up 24 years of work and vanish like I was never there. I sat in my car for over an hour after that meeting, not even starting the engine, just watching the door, waiting to wake up. But I didn't. This was real. At 63 years old, the world doesn't welcome you back with open arms. My skills were sharp, my numbers solid, but the job boards didn't care. "We're looking for someone with more energy," one recruiter said. I knew what that meant. Younger, cheaper, flashier. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was scared. My wife, Nora, tried to reassure me. "You'll find something better," she said. But I'd seen too many guys in my position disappear quietly into early retirement they couldn't afford. I couldn't let that happen. One night I sat with a list of old competitors. Most were gone, bought out, or fading. But one small name caught my eye. Halbridge & Co. They were tiny, barely known, and had been losing ground for years. Still, I made the call. The owner, Reese Halbridge, answered himself. "Marshall Kane?" he said. "Heard of you. Let's meet." It wasn't a promise, but it was the first open door I'd seen in weeks. We met at a small diner 2 towns over. Reese was in his 50s, rough around the edges, and still remembered when sales reps used paper maps. "So why'd you call me?" he asked. I didn't sugarcoat it. I told him Byron had kicked me to the curb to give my territory to his kid. Reese whistled. "Brutal." I nodded. "You probably can't pay me what they did, but I know the routes, I know the buyers, I can still sell." Reese leaned back and smiled. "Actually, I can pay better. Their overhead's bloated. Mine's lean." I blinked. "You're offering me the job?" He nodded. "You've got the fire, and I've got nothing to lose." I left that diner with a job. Not just a job, but a new start. 2 days later, he sent me a work phone and told me my office would be ready soon. I hadn't felt this alive in years. But I had one last visit to make first. On my last day at Byron's company, I didn't make a scene. I didn't burn bridges. I just boxed up my desk, shook hands with the people who mattered, and kept my head high. But as I held my old company-issued phone, I paused. It wasn't mine. Not really. I should have left it there and walked out. But instead, I went into the settings, scrolled down, and clicked call forwarding. I typed in my new number, just in case. I didn't think it would do much. Maybe a few calls would slip through. A little convenience for the clients who'd still need help finding me. I dropped the phone on the desk and walked out. No speech, no bitterness. But in that quiet moment, I had no idea that single tap would become the domino that changed everything. It wasn't planned. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. But it was the first step toward something Byron would never see coming. The next morning, the phone rang. Not my personal cell, but the new work phone Reese gave me. The caller ID showed a name I hadn't seen since last month, one of my biggest accounts. "Marshall?" the voice asked. "I've been trying to reach you at the old number." My heart beat faster. "I'm not with them anymore," I said. "But I'm still in the game." He paused, then said, "Wherever you are, I'm coming with you." That was it. Just like that, one client switched sides. I didn't gloat. I didn't even tell Reese yet. But I felt a small fire light inside me. Maybe that phone setting wasn't just a fluke. Maybe this was my chance to rebuild, one ring at a time. I leaned back in my chair, the new office still empty around me, and smiled. Byron had given me 2 weeks to disappear. But I wasn't gone. I had just started warming up. That week, calls kept coming. At first, just a trickle. Familiar names, old buyers, people asking why my voicemail sounded different. Each time I calmly explained, "I've moved to Halbridge & Co., but nothing's changed on my end. Same service, same support." Most of them didn't even hesitate. "Glad you're still around," one said. "You're the only reason I stayed with them anyway." I didn't ask them to leave Byron's company. I didn't have to. The trust I'd built over 24 years did the work for me. But it wasn't just loyal clients calling. Some of the tougher ones, the high-maintenance accounts, were confused, even annoyed. "What do you mean you're gone?" one snapped. "They didn't tell us anything." I stayed polite. I never badmouthed anyone. But I made it clear, I wasn't disappearing. I was just working with people who respected my time. And that small difference? It made all the difference. One of my hardest clients, a guy named Nate, called late Friday afternoon. He was loud, stubborn, and never easy to please. "You still doing business?" he barked. I told him yes, and where I was now. He paused. "Well, I don't like surprises. They didn't tell us squat." I thought he'd hang up. Instead he said, "You still have that same delivery guy?" I smiled. "Same one," he grunted. "Fine, send me the usual order and throw in 2 extra pallets." That was my first big order at Halbridge, and Reese almost fell over when I told him. "He's been on their books for 15 years, he said. "Not anymore," I replied. The small team at Halbridge was starting to see what I brought with me. These weren't just numbers. They were relationships, real ones. And every time that phone rang, another thread from the old world quietly snapped and tied itself to the new. A few days later, Bryce, Byron's son, made a sales visit to one of my former clients. He showed up with shiny brochures, a fresh suit, and the company car. I wasn't there, but I heard about it by the end of the day. The client, someone I'd worked with for 10 years, told him straight up, "We're not interested." Bryce tried to push, mentioning new pricing and perks, but the client said, "If Marshall's not with you, we're not either." That same afternoon, that same client called me and placed his first order with Halbridge. When I told Reese, his eyebrows shot up. "That kid really thought he could just take over?" I didn't say much. I didn't need to. The clients were speaking loud enough, and every time one switched, I marked it quietly in my notebook. Not to brag, just to remind myself, loyalty isn't something you can hand down like a desk or a title. Then it happened. Bryce called my old number. Of course, that meant the call came to me. I stared at the screen, then answered. "Marshall speaking." There was a pause. "Wait, this is my territory now." He said, "Why are calls still going to you?" I kept my voice steady. "Must be a system glitch." He started shouting, demanding I disable whatever I did. "You're stealing our business," he yelled. I replied calmly, "No one's being stolen. They're just calling who they trust." He hung up without another word. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. But inside I knew something he didn't. I hadn't broken a single rule. I didn't trick anyone. I didn't steal a list. I just picked up the phone when it rang. And that one setting he didn't know about? It was doing all the talking. Byron noticed something was wrong. Sales in my old territory were dropping fast. He called a team meeting, trying to figure out why clients weren't returning calls. "What's going on out there?" he asked. No one had answers. Bryce tried to cover. "They're just slow to change," he mumbled. But everyone could feel it. Something was slipping. Meanwhile, I was on the phone every day with customers I knew by heart. No fancy pitch, no begging, just solid work and trust. The numbers were stacking up. At Halbridge, Reese started giving me more space, more control. "Whatever you're doing," he said, "keep doing it." I didn't tell him about the call forwarding. Not because I was hiding it, but because I didn't need to explain. I was just doing what I'd always done. Helping people who called me. The difference now? Every call helped build something new, something mine. One afternoon, I got a call from another large account I hadn't heard from in months. "Marshall, are you still handling the Midtown deliveries?" I said yes, and the voice on the line sighed in relief. "They sent some kid last week. He got the order wrong, twice." I didn't even have to ask who. Bryce was making the rounds, but the cracks were already showing. He didn't know the clients. He didn't understand the product, and he didn't listen. This customer placed a full reorder with me that day, no hesitation. I logged it, then took a walk outside to clear my head. I hadn't planned any of this, but the more calls I took, the more I saw what Byron and Bryce had done wrong. They thought loyalty was automatic, that titles mattered more than trust. But now, they were learning. Relationships can't be handed over like keys. You have to earn them. And they hadn't. Back at Halbridge, things were shifting. Reese called me into his office. "We're up 38% from last quarter," he said, sliding over a paper. "You're responsible for most of that." I didn't know what to say. He smiled. "I want you to build your own team. Start training a junior rep. You've got more clients than you can handle." I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not just in my numbers, but in the respect behind them. At Byron's place, I was just a tool to be replaced. Here, I was someone building something real. I agreed to train someone new, and we got to work. Every day, more calls came, more orders, more loyalty that couldn't be bought or faked. And still, not a word from Byron, but I knew the storm was coming. He had to notice by now. I just didn't know how loud the thunder would get. Then came the voicemail. I walked into my office one morning and saw a missed call from Byron's number. He hadn't spoken to me since the day he let me go. I hit play. His voice was sharp, tense. "Marshall, what the hell are you doing? Half our clients are gone. People won't even pick up for Bryce. This isn't professional." I listened to the whole thing, then replayed it, just once. He was panicking, blaming, but never admitting the truth. This was all his doing. I saved the voicemail, filed it under just in case. Then I got back to work. The phones kept ringing. Orders kept growing. And the funny thing was, I wasn't even trying to hurt him. I was just answering calls, doing my job. The difference now? Every deal I closed didn't just build my numbers, it chipped away at the empire that kicked me out. A week later, one of my favorite clients, a guy named Hal, called and said something I didn't expect. "Marshall, they're telling everyone you retired." I blinked. "They said what?" He laughed. "Yeah, they said you're done. Not working anymore." I shook my head. "Well, someone better tell that to my phone. It hasn't stopped ringing." We both laughed, but I felt the sting under the joke. Byron and Bryce were trying to erase me, pretend I had vanished. That only made me work harder. That week alone, I pulled in 5 new accounts. Not stolen, earned. All from people who'd been lied to, then found out the truth. I didn't need to fight back with words. I had something better. Results. And every new deal proved what they couldn't admit. You can't replace history with a last name. The next time Bryce called, he didn't yell. He begged. "Can we talk?" he asked, trying to sound calm. "This isn't working, and you know it." I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. He was in over his head, trying to wear shoes he didn't earn. "It's not personal," he added. "It's just business." I paused, then replied, "That's what your dad said to me, remember?" Silence. He knew. I didn't lecture him. I just said, "Clients are calling me, Bryce. That's not something you can fix with a brochure." He mumbled something about changing the company number. I smiled. "Go ahead, they already have mine." He hung up without saying goodbye. That moment sealed it for me. They didn't understand what made a business last. It wasn't cold calls or family ties. It was trust. And once you break that, the people don't forget. Back at Halbridge, Reese brought in a photographer to take team headshots for a new brochure. "You're the centerpiece now," he told me. "You built this wave." I laughed, not because I didn't believe him, but because it felt surreal. A year ago, I thought I was finished. Now I was busier than ever. One of my new clients had even said, "You're the only reason we left them. It's not the company, it's you." That stuck with me. I wasn't a logo. I wasn't a number. I was a person people trusted. And Byron, he never saw that. He thought he was letting go of a salesperson. But he'd cut out the heart of his business. The photo turned out great. Big smile, fresh suit. I looked like someone starting a new chapter. Because I was. And while they were scrambling, I was only getting started. Then the email arrived. An old colleague forwarded it to me. It was from Byron, sent to his internal staff. Effective immediately, all client communication must go through the main office. Personal contact with former employees is not permitted. I shook my head. That desperation? That wasn't a policy. That was panic. He was trying to stop the bleeding, trying to control something already lost. I didn't respond to the email. I didn't need to. Because 5 minutes later my phone rang again. Another client, angry and confused. Why did they say you retired? I explained the truth. Again. And just like that, another account joined me. Byron's walls were closing in, and every order I logged was a crack in his foundation. He built that business on people like me, then threw us away. Now it was collapsing, one lie at a time. It wasn't long before I heard the news. Byron was selling. A client mentioned it during a routine call. He's meeting with a conglomerate next week. Sounds like he's had enough. I hung up, stunned. The company I helped build was being handed off, not to his sons, not to loyal reps, but to strangers with deep pockets. I felt sad, not for Byron, but for the people still there. The warehouse guys, the admin team, they didn't deserve to be caught in this mess. But I also knew this was the ending Byron earned. You don't betray people who gave you their best years and expect to keep winning. I told Reese. He just nodded. That's what happens when the wrong people are in charge. We clinked coffee mugs like glasses. We didn't toast to revenge. We toasted to building things the right way. Byron didn't call me again, but someone else did. His brother Glenn. He used to work behind the scenes handling logistics. Marshall, he said, you really shook the tree. I chuckled. Didn't mean to. He paused. Well, you did. Half the accounts are gone. Bryce quit last week. That stopped me cold. Really? Glenn sighed. He wasn't cut out for it. Never was. Byron just wouldn't admit it. I didn't gloat. I just said, that's a tough way to learn. Glenn lowered his voice. I always respected you, man. What they did, it was wrong. I thanked him. Then he asked, any chance you need a logistics guy? I smiled. I'll talk to Reese. Life has a strange way of circling back. A year ago they buried me. Now, one of their own was asking to join the team. Not out of pity, but because they saw who was still standing. Weeks passed, and the buyout became official. Byron sold the company to a massive corporate group out of Chicago. I didn't feel joy, just closure. Word spread fast. All field reps were being reevaluated. Translation? Let go. I knew most of them. Good people. Some called me for advice. What should we do, they asked. I didn't sugarcoat it. Get ahead of the wave, I told them. Decide your next step before they decide it for you. A few even asked if Halbridge had openings. Reese and I made room where we could. We weren't a giant, but we were growing fast. Ironically, Byron's decision to replace me with his son had built two teams, one that crumbled and one that thrived. And mine was still standing, stronger than ever. One rainy afternoon I drove past the old office. The sign was still there, but the parking lot was empty. The windows looked dark, cold. For a second I felt a strange urge to go inside. But I didn't. That place wasn't mine anymore. I pulled over and stared for a while, not remembering all the years, the wins, the miles, the loyalty. Then I pulled out my phone and checked my calendar. 3 client meetings that afternoon, 2 more tomorrow. My time was full again. But now, every second of it meant something. I wasn't filling someone else's pockets anymore. I was building something I believed in. I took one last look at the office, nodded to myself, and drove away without looking back. That Friday, Reese called an all-hands meeting. We gathered in the conference room. The team had doubled in size since I joined. Marshall, he said, this company owes you more than we can put on paper. You didn't just bring in accounts, you brought back heart. Everyone clapped. I don't usually like attention, but that day, I stood tall. I had spent 24 years being quiet, loyal, reliable. Then I was tossed out like I didn't matter. But now, every person in that room knew I did. After the meeting, my junior rep came over. I want to be like you, he said. I smiled. Then never stop caring about the people. That's the real secret. He nodded. I saw myself in him. Hungry, honest, driven. And I knew, this time I was leaving something that would last. 2 months later, I got one final call. It was Byron. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. His voice was low, tired. They let me go, he said, after the sale. I stayed quiet. They didn't keep Bryce either, he added. It all just fell apart. I didn't gloat. I didn't throw his words back in his face. Instead, I said, I'm sorry it ended like that. He was silent. Then, you were always the best we had. I should have seen it. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I hope you're okay, I said, and I meant it. Because holding a grudge doesn't pay the bills, but building something better, that always does. Today, I'm 72. I still take a few calls from old clients. Some just want to chat, others still place small orders. I don't mind. Every ring reminds me of what I built. Not just numbers, not just sales, but trust, people, respect. I work less now. I spend more time with Nora, more time fishing, more time enjoying mornings that aren't rushed. But I keep that Halbridge phone on my desk, and yes, I still smile when it rings. Because I remember the day they said I had 2 weeks left. The day they replaced me with the boss's son, and the quiet little thing I did on the way out. One button, call forwarding. It wasn't revenge. It was just me, staying reachable, staying real. And in the end, that tiny move didn't just save me. It built something better. Something I could call my own, worth every ring.